to the ones you
You
have.
don't put stuff
Turn 'em
where it
on.
goes in the
They have to
kitchen.
No, it doesn't, because
It goes
It
on
goes
the
both ways, because I got one that
they
does the
made
opposite.
any choices.
Call tonight's meeting to order. Monique, if you'll call the roll.
The drawer is supposed to be there.
President Baker,
Here.
Vice President Thompson,
Present.
Secretary Duffy,
Here.
Director Anderson,
Here.
Director Flores,
Here.
Director Kirkland.
Here. All right. Anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
None? Okay. Item number 4, approval of the minutes. Consider approval of the BCRUA meeting minutes for August 23rd, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Passes. Number 5A, consider an update from the general manager regarding BCRUA water demand.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we've been doing through these summer months, I want to go over what the water demands have been for the BCRUA water treatment plant in the last month. So let me pull up. This graph should look familiar to you, but it's a summary of all of the water use from all the 3 cities compared to the total plant capacity. And as you can see, September, while it's still been hot, has not been 106 degrees. So we're doing much better in terms of being well below our total demand. And then I've got slides for each of the individual cities. So Round Rock is quite different from last month, so back to normal there. And really no comments on that. Cedar Park also, pretty much base loads off of our water treatment plant, as you can see, down below 3 million gallons and reducing over the month. Leander also is reduced average daily use and peak, still having a few bumps in the peak demand, but keeping well within their capacity. And that's really all I had for that item, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions or comments? Just curiosity, have we seen has Lake Travis, or the flows increasing at all from the current rain, or is it all been pretty steady?
It's still pretty
update on that?
flat, but we can only hope for October rains.
Okay, all right, well, hopefully everybody will keep conserving. Okay, thank you for that. Moving to resolutions, item 6A, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute an agreement with Walker Partners for planning level evaluation, Phase 2A WTP expansion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I presented this item to you last month as a discussion item, as this is a big step for BCRUA to step into expanding the water treatment plant. So we are proposing to do a planning level evaluation to identify the design criteria and other elements of what we would do next in final design. So I've asked Aaron Archer from Walker Partners, our engineer, to walk through that again in case you have any questions. And let me turn it over to him.
Very good.
Yeah, this is generally just a recap of some of the things we talked about last month. In terms of talking about the need for Phase 2A, we really have not been talking about moving Phase 2A forward until more recently, as we continue to look at the capacity required from the water treatment plant to meet the demands of the 3 cities. I'm showing you a plot I showed you last month. The yellow line is the capacity required from the plant collectively from the 3 cities, and I showed dashed lines on there for each individual city. And as you look forward right now, we will bring online a Phase 1D expansion that's currently underway, which will come online before summer of 2025. And I do want to point out when I have these years on here, think summer, where each of those lines are for a year, not the beginning of the year, not January. It really represents the peak demand of that year. And so once we get Phase 1D online, we'll have a capacity of about 39 MGD. We'll actually have more treatment capacity than 39. It'll be more like 42 MGD, but we're limited on how much water the floating intake can make at this point. As you continue to track out into the future, Phase 1D expansion will get us by, but by summer of 2027, using these older demand projections, we show that we would be exceeding the capacity we have at the plant in 2027, which necessitates bringing Phase 2A online before summer of 2027, really at the same time that the Phase 2 raw water delivery system would come online. And once we complete that expansion, which would take us up to about 65 MGD, we'll be looking good pretty far out into the future. Again, looking at this figure that we've looked at a number of times, kind of the overall phasing plan for the water treatment plant. Everything in blue represents Phase 1 facilities. They've either been built or they're being built right now. The Phase 2A expansion contemplates the addition of 2 new treatment trains to the south of the Phase 1 treatment structure, as well as a clear well and a couple other improvements for solids handling and also potentially an administrative building, which is an item we need to talk about and look through. The Phase 2A expansion breaks out in terms of capacity with 52.4% of the capacity going to Leander and the difference, or 47.6%, going to Round Rock. Cedar Park is not participating in Phase 2A. In fact, the next time that Cedar Park participates will be Phase 3, so very far out into the future. We looked at this last month as well, a general schedule to implement Phase 2A and get it online prior to summer of 27. This preliminary basis of design level evaluation that we're doing right now will take about 4 months, and it will tee us up to give us a scope to move forward with final design. Final design combined with getting some of our permits approved is likely to take about 14 months. We'll move through procurement and have about 22 months left to get to substantial completion, which I think is sufficient at this point. But I would point out we don't have a lot of buffer in this schedule right now. We really do need to get it moving forward. In terms of the scope of services for the basis of design, the first thing we need to do is update the demand projections. What I had shown you on the first slide, those are from January of 2022. Some of the cities, I think their demands have not changed very much since then, and others have. So we'll get those updated. It'll give us an opportunity to look at phasing for the system. And in particular, I want to look at raw water pumping capacity. When we designed the Phase 2 raw water delivery system, we were not considering that we would supply water for the Phase 2A plant expansion. So I do believe we'll probably need to add raw water pumping capacity down at the Phase 2 pump station to accommodate the increased treatment capacity at the plant. In addition to looking at how the capacity and phasing breaks down, one item that I had mentioned last month is we want to look at treatment at the plant. We know water quality has changed some over the years in Lake Travis. A lot of that, you can see that when you look at the lake right now and see all the vegetation in the lake. A lot of that, I believe, has been driven by invasive mussels. Anecdotally, I think the operators have told me at times they have a more difficult time treating now than they used to have. And so I just want to spend some time going over the data and trying to determine if there's any improvements we could make to the treatment process that would allow them to do their job more easily to meet today's regulations and future regulations. After we've looked at some alternative technologies, we'll evaluate and compare those and talk with the Oversight Committee and then determine what we think the final scope will look like so that we can prepare a scope of services to move into the final design phase. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions?
Hey, Aaron, to your slide that had the 22-month window, when we were running this planning for the tunnel and everything, we ran into a bunch of extra things we had to worry about, like the different neighborhoods and power lines and this and that. So if you were looking at a crystal ball with the 2A schedule, do you anticipate any big challenges that we have to work against or plan for?
Because we're on our existing plant site and because we're in a good position right now for power supply, a lot of those issues drop off the table in terms of external stakeholders and impacting other communities and bringing power to our site. The one item that we would want to talk about is whether we're going to go back to Water Development Board again for SWIFT funding for any of the project participants. Right now, Phase 2A is not part of any of the funding that we've obtained in the past. And if we do go back to Water Development Board and get SWIFT funding, they of course have their own hoops that we have to jump through to get that project approved, and that adds a little bit of time to our permitting approval at the end of the project before we can move into procurement. And we'll have 2 opportunities to go in and talk to the Water Development Board about funding. One will be this January. The cycle opens up typically in January, and it closes for the initial abridged application at the end of January. So we could talk about it this January, in which case those funds would close in October, which would be still during the design phase. You could also delay it to the following year. At that point, you'd be cash funding and then reimbursing yourself potentially. And so we have 2 windows of opportunity to think that through.
And then, given the state of the world, do you still anticipate any supply chain issues or constraints, or that we'd run into some issues with that?
Right now, in terms of some of the other projects that we have under construction, including the raw water delivery system down on Lake Travis, that has eased up quite a bit with the exception of some electrical items out there. And so we continue to track that. A lot of it relates to control panels. Those have become difficult to obtain. But, we're talking at this point beyond a year into the future before we let that for the contractors to chew on, and a lot can change in over a year.
Thank you.
Other
Right.
questions?
Yeah, I
go
had
ahead.
one more question. I was going to say, can you remind us of how the cities are paying for this? I know that Cedar Park is not participating. You said until 3A. Until 3A.
Basically.
That's right. For this evaluation that we're proposing, the cost is $198,895. And Leander would be 52.4% of that, or $104,000. And Round Rock would be 47.6%, which is $94,600. And both cities plan to use local funds for that. Now, there will be some of the elements of the project that will be designed for full build-out. So the goal right now is when final design is ready to commence, and you are considering the final design contract, which will be in around March, it looks like. We will, at that point, Aaron will have identified which of the elements of the project will be shared with Cedar Park once they come on the line. And so in that master contract amendment that will be needed, we can spell out exactly how much a reimbursement would be and when that would be paid. So
Thank you.
we'll do that at that time. Yeah, so we've completed negotiations with Walker Partners. The operating committee has reviewed this thoroughly and are recommending to move forward with the agreement, with this attached scope of work and the engineering services agreement.
One follow-up question on your schedule that you have on the screen. What's the biggest risk? You said we have very little buffer. Is it weather-related, labor-related? What do you feel is the biggest concern there?
I think that we can control this schedule. I mean, I typically would worry about permitting reviews. Those can be significant sometimes, but right now I think we're primarily looking at TCEQ and Texas Water Development Board, and we've run that trap a number of times. I think we know what to expect there. We don't have anybody like Village of Valente or Travis County or City of Austin or some other entities that we don't work with as regularly. So I think that the permitting side right now is a pretty clean path. So I don't see any major impediments to moving this schedule forward at this time. I would just hope when we get to construction, given the amount of work out there that's under construction already and the amount of work that's in design right now, that we can find a number of contractors that will look at it.
All right. Any other questions? All right, accept a motion to approve item 6A.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, have a motion by Vice President Thompson, second by Secretary Duffy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. All right, thank you. Item 6B, consider resolution approving the BCRUA investment policy and strategy.
Thank you, Mr. President. The BCRUA board reviews the investment policy and strategy annually, and all three CFOs and their staff have reviewed this, and I guess we must have done a pretty good job last year because they are not proposing any revisions, and except for on the authorized broker dealer list, in which case there were enough significant changes that we have just replaced the whole list with what was recommended from our financial advisor. And I have Kevin Klosterbauer here from Cedar Park, the CFO, to, if you have any questions or want to talk through any of the elements on either the policy or the broker-dealer list.
Any questions on this item? Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve item 6B.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Secretary Duffy, second by Vice President Thompson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will move to executive session. Let me read the item. Consider an executive session as authorized by Government Code 551.071 related to consultation with the board's attorneys regarding the process to replace the general manager, and as authorized by Government Code 551.074 related to the employment of the replacement general manager. So we will go into executive session at 6:17. Good. All right, we will reconvene at 6:41. That brings us to item 8A, consider discussion and or possible action related to the process for replacement of the general manager who is retiring at the end of this year. With that, I will make the motion to authorize members of the operating committee to negotiate terms of employment as general manager with Sam Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Item 9, director closing comments regarding the items of community interest. I'll begin to my right, Councilmember Flores.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and especially thank you to the OC and Michael and Dan for coming to a good decision.
Director or Vice President Thompson.
Thank you to Karen for all your work with BCRUA, and good luck on your retirement.
Director Anderson.
Same here. Thank you, Karen, and great meeting tonight, and good night.
Director Kirkland.
Thank you all for attending.
And same thing, thank you, Karen. We not excited for your announcement, but we support you and know that you have good things in store for you. And thank you for the OC for your input and research for us as well. So with that, we will be adjourned at 6:42.